welcome to Half the Battle.
Today, we're continuing our look at the comic with issue 45, In Search of Candy. The cover shows, some guy about to be Katniss Everdeened by Zartan. I'll tell you ahead of time, this is Ripcord, though I couldn't tell from the cover. After last issue's diversion into introducing new toys, we're back to the plot. Judging from this title anyway, which refers to Candy, a girl Ripcord knew. The opening page has Ace and Ripcord doing a reconnaissance flight over Cobra Island. Since the Joes finally remembered, oh yeah, Cobra has an island now. Maybe we should keep tabs on that. They spot a new building, a mysterious circle construction.
And yay!
It's the first appearance of the Terrordrome. Awesome! Professor Apple, the Crimson Guard who created Cobra Island and happens to be Candy's father, spots the jet and wants to shoot it down. Zartan overrules him, stating that if it turns out that Sky Striker was just a civilian airliner, Cobra Island wouldn't exist much longer.
Okay, time for a break in the story.
When reading this, I thought the comic was referencing a real-life event, the accidental shooting down of an Iranian passenger plane by a United States Navy ship, especially since the ship mistook the plane for an Iranian Tomcat. And if you'll recall, the Sky Striker was based on the Tomcat F-14 fighter jet. But that tragedy occurred in 1988, 2 years after this comic came out, so it's just an eerie coincidence.
That doesn't mean it still couldn't have been a real-world reference, though, as this sort of thing has happened before.
If it is an illusion, it's probably about the shooting down of Korean Airlines Flight 007 in 1983. The plane unintentionally entered Soviet airspace, and thinking it was a spy plane, not a civilian aircraft, the Russians shot it down. It would be quite a dig at the Russians by the comic, saying that even Cobra aren't big enough bastards to risk shooting down a commercial airliner.
Anyway, enough of Half the Battle does National Geographic air crash investigation. Let's get back to the plot, shall we?
So, the Joes are really interested in what Cobra is up to, naturally. But flyovers just aren't cutting it. Unfortunately, as Hawk explains to his CO, General Austin, even a top-secret small boots-on-ground recon mission is out of the question for political reasons. It would be great if they could, but they can't, so they shan't. End of story. Meanwhile, Ripcord has been complaining about his missing girlfriend Candy and how her dad might know where she is. I should point out that she's actually his ex-girlfriend. She broke up with him.
Dude's got boundary issues.
In more ways than one, in fact, since he ejects over Cobra Island to find some answers, acting completely on his own. Word of his little stunt gets back to Austin and Hawk, who confesses he deliberately put Ripcord on the recon flight, knowing that in his troubled state of mind, he might just go in on his own, giving Hawk an excuse to send in a team to get him back. Yeah, he put a heartbroken guy squarely on the path of doing something completely illegal.
It's been a long while, folks, but it's finally time to up the count!
So, who's gonna be the team that goes in?
Well, one with at least 2 new Joes, of course, because we've got toys to sell, damn it!
And who are we introducing? Well, it's Alpine and Quick Kick who...
Hey, wait a minute!
Quick Kick is wearing a uniform! A real damn uniform!
It's a miracle!
And what's the first thing Quick Kick says? Well, he takes one look at Snake Eyes and Spirit and remarks they're not sticklers for the uniform code.
I see what you did there, comic.
And even though it's not pictured, I can just see the glint in his eyes when he figures out the Joes have a lax dress code.
I wonder if, wait, let me just check ahead a bit.
Yup, the very next time we see him, the shirt is off. Now, that didn't take long, did it? Anyway, while in the mess hall, Snake Eyes receives a telegram from the now late Softmaster identifying the killer of the Hardmaster, who is Storm Shadow's uncle. But we, the readers, don't find out the name as Snake Eyes just runs off. You know, between Ripcord and Snake Eyes just taking off on personal business, I'm beginning to think the G.I.Joe team might have a bit of a discipline problem. The ninja immediately goes to Storm Shadow's hideout to inform him, but still without telling us who the killer is.
Blue-balling bastards!
Meanwhile, Cobra have spotted somebody parachuting onto the island, and Zartan goes to investigate. At the same time, the Joe rescue team, including Shirtless Quick Kick, set off for Cobra Island, while independently, Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes do the same to look for the killer.
And here's where things get a little bit tricky for me.
Normally, with different storylines in the same comic, I just give them to you separately, but here I have to switch over for a very good reason. You see, the ninjas are discussing the death of their master, while elsewhere, Zartan is giving exposition. Well, I say the ninjas are discussing it, but it's Stormy that's doing all of the talking, duh. He says the killer was an expert with the bow and arrow, while Zartan says he's quite good with a bow.
Are you getting it yet?
Then Storm Shadow says the killer must have had the ninja skill of hearing so well it's like seeing straight through a wall, while Zartan mentions he once had a sound amplifying device on his bow.
Do you get it yet?
And so we, the readers, finally get told point blank and unexpectedly the Hard Master was killed by...
the Spanish Inquisition!
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition!
It's Zartan, well, of course. You know, they kept the killer a secret so well for many issues, but they really telegraphed it here.
There's another thing that bothers me about this reveal.
Namely, the way we're given the exposition. Storm Shadow is talking to Snake Eyes, but he's not telling him anything he doesn't already know. It's strictly for the benefit of the reader. Zartan is even worse. He's monologuing to himself for no apparent reason. Sure, some character background on him could maybe justify this as not being out of character for him, but it's not like he's got a Smeagol Gollum thing going on here. He's just talking to himself, dumping plot on us.
And this could have been fixed so easily.
It's a comic. Instead of talking, just use thought bubbles. Being privy to a character's inner thoughts is a lot better than having them figuratively explaining things to a wall.
I will now eat a sandwich. A sandwich that, as I well know, I have just purchased from the deli. I'm glad we had this talk, Wall.
Anyway, plot dump out of the way, the ninjas arrive at Cobra Island, as well as the rescue party. Yeah, I'd forgotten about them as well. And that's where their parts in this issue end, so that's to be continued. What won't be continued is the cat and mouse game between Zartan and Ripcord, though it's unclear who's the mouse. Ripcord takes an arrow through the arm, as well as a glancing shot to the head, but does manage to shoot Big Z in the leg. Ripcord has the upper hand until Zartan remembers he has all these holographic chameleon gadgets and turns invisible for all intents and purposes. Ripcord turns invisible the old-fashioned way by hiding under the mud and surprises his foe.
We don't actually see the fight that follows, only the result. Yeah, the entire fight happens off-panel.
All we know is one man comes out victorious, but we don't know who, as the guy gives a vague monologue about now infiltrating the enemy headquarters disguised as his opponent. We won't find out who won until next issue.
But considering the dramatic monologuing, yeah, my money's on Zartan.
And that's pretty much the comic, with one tiny detail I haven't mentioned yet. The last we see Hawk is when General Austin has a conference call with the President and others announcing his retirement. As a result, Hawk is promoted to Brigadier General and becomes Commander-in-Chief of the G.I.Joe team.
Man, it really pays to be a giant douchebag, doesn't it?
And that was In Search of Candy.
Overall, it was pretty good.
Without a doubt, the best part was the confrontation between Zartan and Ripcord. And it was nice to see new characters being introduced without them derailing the story. We also finally get Hawk becoming General Hawk. Only took him 45 issues. If there's one thing I didn't like, it was the monologuing.
The endless monologuing.
John McClane in Die Hard didn't talk to himself as much as these guys. And like I've said before, just use thought bubbles. It comes across as way more natural than not being able to shut up for a single minute. Other than that, it was a fine issue that advanced the overall storyline quite nicely, and I recommend checking this issue out.
See you next time, everybody. And hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing? Especially share, that really seems to help.